This video remixes multimedia clips for non-commercial fair dealing purposes of satire, parody, reporting the news, and social commentary. Please do not contact the people I discuss in this video or harass them in any way.
Rude alert! Rude alert!
The following programme may be offensive to some viewers.
It's federal election time here on Planet 4X, or at least it was when I started making this video, and even by our usual insipid standards, this campaign has been as boring as a starved termite in the power tool aisle at Bunnings. Which is why we're so lucky to have Katherine Deves to bring some colour and controversy to our dull, virally challenged, and slightly submerged lives.
Okay, showtime.
Deves was a candidate for our right-leaning political party, which has been running the country to the ground for the last umpteen years. Before getting into politics, she co-founded Save Women's Sport Australasia, which campaigns against the inclusion of transgender women in women's sport.
Not happy, Jen!
When her eye-opening comments on social media came to light, Deves came under sustained fire from the media and even members of her own political party.
Don't let her go! Fire!
Social media posts where she says the most inflammatory things about trans people, many ill-informed, inaccurate things which are dangerous to young people struggling as they are dealing with their gender identities.
Formal agrees.
I want to apologize for not looking after you better. My behavior has been self-centered and inappropriate.
We're taking you someplace where you'll be very well protected.
As it turned out, Deves failed to win her seat, so we can safely put all this in the past and get on with our lives.
Is there anything else?
Excuse me? Excuse
Someone
me?
talking?
Excuse me?
Oh! Yeah, hello.
But there's more.
You left a piece out.
Fine. I know very little about sport, but I have spent quite a while trying to figure out whether I'm transgender, which gives me every right to comment on this schmozzle. So there. The ABC's Media Watch recently devoted a totally fair and balanced 7 minutes to telling Deves to go sit in the corner and think about what she's done. After all, Samantha Maiden's reporting had provided ample and copious evidence
that Deves had compared trans activists to Nazis and sex offenders, linked the trans community to serial killers, suggested gender dysphoria was misdiagnosed autism.
It's a good thing I'm a left-winger who trusts the ABC to be fair and impartial, because otherwise I might fact-check those claims about what Deves said and think,
That's not entirely accurate.
But at least the media was right to make a fuss about Deves calling children mutilated and sterilised. Not only was it really quite impolite,
Rude alert! Rude alert!
but no one under 18 in Australia is allowed to get that kind of surgery. Except for cutting their tits off.
Wait, what?
You try to raise them to think.
Hey, what do you know?
Skynet fights back.
There seems to be no awareness that overseas in a multitude of countries there is a very serious and intense medical debate.
What do you mean, sir?
You may not ask questions.
Understood.
Barry! Just listen to me, Barry!
On a completely unrelated note, can anyone tell me what ACON is? Or more precisely, what ACON does? No reason.
Don't change the subject.
Our legal eagle does like to invoke Godwin's law though, which is silly, and she should feel silly. I mean, if I were feeling charitable, which I'm not, I might suppose that Deves is trying to find a metaphor to express the feeling of standing up for what she thinks is right.
You don't just let things happen. You make a stand. You say no. You have the guts to do what's right when everyone else just runs away.
As if. However, even if I were feeling charitable, which I'm not, I'd reckon that bringing those World War II guys into it is tasteless and over the top. If you have to compare people who have an agenda you don't like to the ultimate baddies, try Daleks. That's much funnier.
Would you care for some tea?
That would be very nice, thank you.
That is a joke.
It's a good thing I would never judge transgender activists and their well-meaning allies by the things they say on social media. Why, if I did, I might conclude that Deves has a point.
Don't change the subject.
This conversation is irrelevant. Just be kind.
But never mind all that, who's got the time?
I'll get back to you, Barry.
As a lifelong Labour and Greens voter, I was pretty cynical about Scotty from Marketing's reasons for supporting Deves.
A diversion.
And his cheap ploy seems to have backfired anyway, because he's now experiencing the euphoria of transitioning to former Prime Minister. Clearly Australia didn't fall for this transparent attempt to focus our attention on males who identify as women. transgender women competing in female sport, when the number of actual trans women currently competing is more than 0?
You're blaming the wrong person!
Right.
For the rest of this video, I'm barely going to say another word about the deviously distracting Katherine Deves in order to hammer home what an absolute non-issue this is. In fact, it's such a non-issue that the Insight TV show on SBS devoted a whole episode to it called Gender Games. You definitely shouldn't watch that episode, which is available on SBS On Demand, by the way, just letting you know so you can avoid watching it by accident. Oh sure, it might feature several experts and athletes, some of whom are trans women, who have concerns about the implications for women's sport. But I have it on good authority that anyone of that opinion needs to trim their lunatic fringe.
They sound like a friggin' cult, is what they sound like.
After all, we all know that trans women are women. How exactly we know this, I haven't quite figured out yet, but everyone says it, so everyone must be right.
What does your heart tell you?
I am a woman.
I just got this feeling. I was born into a man's body, but I've always been a woman.
I feel like the conversation's done. Like, trans women are women, so come in, be part of the conversation. These fringe lunatic groups who are trying to exclude trans women from the conversation or from being allowed to identify as women, I really think they need to be given less oxygen, not more.
That was ABC radio presenter Yumi Stynes, who I presume will be rebranding her show, Ladies We Don't Need to Talk. And it's a truth universally acknowledged that the instant a person born male announces
I am a woman,
an impenetrable force field prevents them from participating in any kind of sport except the specifically female category. No other options exist or could be created.
Well, I knew you'd never pass the genetic scan, so I overrode the security program.
Fortunately, we have some excellent and sensible critics willing to set the record straight. Like Associate Professor Cheung, an actual endocrinologist who actually works in actual transgender healthcare. In her highly informative and reassuring article for the Sydney Morning Herald, she explains that there's nothing to worry about, because we don't know enough to be worried.
Wait, what?
We just don't have enough solid data right now.
Later, Professor David Handelsman and Dr. Emma Hilton wrote an interesting article on the same topic for The Australian. They argued that male advantage in sport persists even after years of suppressing testosterone. Or so I'm told. Of course, as a staunch lefty, I would never read anything in that Murdoch rag. At least not when anyone's looking.
Don't change the subject.
Cheung is, however, quite worried about trans girls not getting enough exercise.
Yep, you got a point there.
She says we need to break down barriers to encourage trans people to get moving. Since she also reassures us that this is all a storm in a teacup because there were hardly any trans women competing at the last Olympics, I assume that she has an ingenious plan to get more trans women into women's sport without getting more trans women into women's sport.
Wait a minute.
Is she saying what I think she's saying? Because if she is...
I don't know, and I have no opinion.
It's definitely not a problem, though, because the Sex Discrimination Act already allows for exclusion where relevant. Except when gender identity overrides it, which I thought was the whole point of sticking gender identity into law, and the whole reason Katherine Deves has an axe to grind about it.
Rock crushes scissors.
And, says Cheung, no sporting body has called for a revision. Now, that couldn't possibly be why Save Women's Sport was set up in the first place, because its supporters felt the sporting organisations were asleep at the wheel? Or worse, pushing an agenda?
You're welcome to stay here and be part of an exciting experiment.
Would you like to know more? But there's more.
Whoa, look at the size of it!
Yep, it's a whopper, all right.
Remember, Cheung says that only 0.5% of Australians identify as transgender, which is of course a tiny, tiny minority. Why, it's only a minuscule 130,000 people.
What is this?
And that's exactly what the census found 6 years ago, in 2016, when about 350 Aussies identified as trans.
Wait, what?
Okay, around 1,000 if we're generous.
Wait, what?
Yep, those two numbers look about the same to me, and definitely don't make me wonder whether something strange is going on with the statistics.
What's going on?
They also accurately reflect what we see in today's schools, where hardly anyone has a trans classmate.
Wait a minute.
Right, no more talking, class.
We thank the tribals.
We were feeding New York, but New York went dark. So we patched over to DC, they went down. LA, Chicago, uplink to London.
And even if those numbers strike you as ever so slightly strange, Cheung goes on to point out that only a third of trans people identify as trans women.
Wait, what?
That's male to female, or MTF.
Wait a minute!
I, for one, see nothing odd or puzzling about that statement at all. Even though for most of the 20th century, trans women, MTF, outnumbered trans men, FTM, by at least 2 to 1, and maybe as many as 4 to 1.
I thought everybody knew this.
So when Cheung casually drops the bombshell that ratio has flipped around, I'm certainly not inclined to ask, since when? Or, why did that change?
Don't know and have no opinion.
But aren't you even curious? Don't you want to know?
I know enough to live my life.
I'm especially relieved that Cheung says being trans is not a choice and has something or other to do with genes, which makes it sound like some kind of intersex condition and doesn't give the game away by mentioning the different kinds of gender dysphoria.
There's more than one.
You gotta be kidding me, right?
There's a hint for you, all right?
But that's not the big question. See, you're missing the big question.
And it's a question I don't want you to think about. And I'm going to clearly spell it out for you just so you don't catch yourself contemplating it by accident.
The question is this.
Is being trans something you are and always were, like being gay or left-handed? Or is becoming trans something you do, like getting married?
Come on. All I want is a little yes or no.
If being trans is some kind of built-in quality in your brain, then transgender people are transgender even if they don't actually take any hormones or get any surgery. It also means that transgender adults must logically once have been transgender children, waiting to be found and helped to escape their mismatched bodies.
I'm not a girl.
Now we all want to protect and help kids, don't we? So when Katherine Deves calls such vulnerable children mutilated and sterilized, we gasp in horror. We're not hurting them, we're helping them. We're liberating them, aren't we?
Yay! You did it!
And we certainly shouldn't stop to wonder where all the trans kids were, or all the trans adults, for that matter, back when we were growing up.
Have you ever been mistaken for a man?
No. Have you?
However, if becoming transgender is something you do for a reason, such as your mental health, in the same way that you get married for a reason, such as love, or possibly money, then you only count as trans if you actually transition in some way. You know, like the old school word, transsexual. But that doesn't mean trans isn't real or trans people don't exist. Of course trans people exist. They've been around for ages. And so have married people. But were you born married? If you're married now, would it have made sense to call you a married kid back when you were 5? And what about if you get a divorce? Does that mean you were never married in the first place? You can't put marriage under a microscope and study it. It's a social identity, not a scientific reality. It's a label we place on ourselves when we do something, and it's a label we can remove if it no longer applies. If all that sounds like airy-fairy theorizing, it's not. You see, if an adult isn't trans until they do something about it, then qualifying for trans status would be a bit like qualifying for a sports team. You'd have to at least put some effort in and show that you can walk the walk before you earn your legal exceptions, like the old rule that you had to get the full surgery before you could legally count as changing your sex. And in some cases, we might decide that no exceptions can be permitted at all because it would conflict with the rights of other people, such as, I don't know, female people?
I got thoughts like little bugs crawling in and out of my head.
And if a child isn't trans until they actually transition, then before they transition, they're just a quirky kid with issues that could be treated in various ways, or even left alone to grow out of it. In that case, by promoting affirming care and medical transition as the best way to help, instead of a last resort, we would actually be making a terrible mistake. And that horrible thing Deves said about mutilation and sterilization would in fact be entirely accurate.
You're welcome to stay here and be part of an exciting experiment.
Or maybe I'd rather leave all that complicated stuff up to the experts, who have definitely never made a mistake before about anything to do with mental health.
You volunteered, didn't you? But I didn't know you were going to be giving me electric shocks.
Nice glass of warm milk, a little nap, and a total frontal lobotomy. Red wires, green wires, stuck 'em right through me.
Nah, crazy talk. Anyone daring to contemplate such dangerous questions risks summoning the Grim Reaper. Or so I hear. And nothing shuts down debate like that particular threat, especially for parents.
So shut up.
I'm not a girl. I've got some kind of shield around them.
Their gender identities.
I can't see it.
I can't see it!
But everything we fire at them detonates too early before we can get close enough to cause any damage.
Everyone is safe here.
What they've done is they have revived the extinct issue of gay conversion therapy, which was undoubtedly unethical.
Hey! I'm getting a little tired of this.
No effect on target. No effect. Roger. No effect.
He'll do no such thing.
But these bans on conversion therapy include this idea of changing gender identity.
There is only one true belief, the other heresy.
I just got this feeling.
I'm not a girl.
So if a therapist in those jurisdictions has a young person who is distressed about their birth sex,
dealing with their gender identities,
I'm not a girl.
and that therapist might think that one good outcome is to relieve the distress
Dressed as a boy. Why?
Safer to travel, my lord.
Smart.
and help that young person re-embrace their biological sex.
This one's a girl.
That could lead to a complaint that that therapist is practicing conversion therapy, and it could be a criminal offence.
Oh God, I have to be careful.
Everyone is safe here.
A brilliant victory brought about by your indomitable will to win.
But there's still more.
Warning. Aren't you in the wrong place, sir?
I don't think so.
Why would anyone make such a fuss about trans women in the first place? It's not as if anyone claiming to be a trans girl has ever done anything that might make women a little bit wary about letting them hang out in female-only spaces. And it's not as if most violent crimes and sexual assaults all over the world are committed by male people rather than female people. Even if it was, it would be totally and completely irrelevant, because trans women are women.
Warning, incoming game.
Of course, according to American stats, only about 1 in 50 females are lesbians.
You hear that? Les!
So it's a good thing I would never ask myself why at least 1 in 3 trans women are attracted to women.
Wait, what?
If that's true, you have to have a measure of intelligence about you, which means you can reason.
On a completely unrelated note, have you ever heard of the cotton ceiling?
Better think before opening that door. Something weird going on.
Wait, I'm sorry. I don't know if you've noticed, but you're a guy. Lisa's a lesbian.
I'm a lesbian.
Have you ever felt like this? Have strange things happen? Are you going round a twist?
No!
Rock crushes scissors.
We're lesbians! Why would you do this?
Don't change the subject.
No, come on. You must see the pattern.
Yeah, well, whatever it is, don't involve me. I don't know anything.
Don't you even ask?
Well, why would I?
You're a journalist.
Right. Future of fuel injection would be page 2. The future of the universe? Forget it. It's the same everywhere. Once the tripods start to move, no more news comes out of that area.
It's so nice to have skipped across the surface of this topic just far enough to know that I don't need to find out more.
Ignorance keeps me safe. It keeps us all safe.
You see, if I did start asking questions about those little puzzles, I might figure out why Katherine Deves holds the view she does and what drove her to make such startling comments.
It might work.
You're blaming the wrong person!
Every waking hour is spent in what some might say has become my own personal religion.
There is only one true belief.
There will be consequences.
I might even stop wondering what planet Katherine Deves is from and start wondering if the real question is, what planet are transgender activists from?
Meanwhile, elsewhere on the planet,
On a completely unrelated note, have you ever heard of gender self-ID? Trans women are women.
Explain how.
If I decide I'm a woman, then I am a woman.
Woohoo! Medals, awards, a parade.
Do you understand the implications?
I can do anything. Be anything.
ultimate power.
What could possibly go wrong?
I don't know.
You can't imagine.
I don't know. I can imagine quite a bit.
Trust me, everything will be all right.
You may fire when ready.
What?
You're far too trusting.
You will destroy all for which they have fought and suffered.
Can't have
expect me to buy that phony story, do you?
Wait a minute!
Nah, the idea of trying to understand where someone's coming from, or find out whether there's some kind of, I don't know, coherent underlying framework for the way she views the world, is so 20th century. We live in the futuristic future now. We're much more enlightened than that.
Ignorance is bliss.
Everyone is safe here.
That will be all. Dismissed.
Yes, sir.
Let's go.
It is the strict policy of Fortress Australia that the Space Invader War not be mentioned within the walls.
Let no one touch it.
That's too bad. It would have been a really great story.
Authorized by the Martian government, Mars.
In other news, alien saucers continue to rain destruction upon Earth.
Is there no one on your planet who behaves in a way that's contrary to reality?
Country after country, falling like dominoes.
It was as if they knew what was going on, but they didn't want to talk about it.
The Martians have landed.
There's only one true believer.
Transwomen are women.
You sound like a friggin' cult.
Earth has been subjugated.
What? We have to be subjugated to men?
Transphobia.
Wait, what?
Let me explain. No, there is too much.
But I know you want more.
Hey, were you on the plane?
One thing though, don't assume that just because someone criticizes transgender activism or gender ideology, they must be a right-wing bigot.
Why are you locking me up?
For instance, many radical and gender-critical feminists are left-wing, and there are plenty of trans people worried about this stuff too. This issue affects the whole political plane, whether you've woken up to it yet or not. But by the way, Yumi Stynes, if you happen to be watching, I hear your women's issues show is covering sex topics this year, which in retrospect makes my choice of satirical character for you slightly inappropriate. Sorry about that. Anyway, I feel it's really important to warn you not to cover this topic.
What's that?
Ladies, take it from a guy who knows. You really don't need to talk about that.
Oh, really? This...
He's making the whole last bit out. There's no such thing. Apologize.